So there's been more on the news today about the bin lorry crash in George Square, Queen Street, George Square, and the man Harry Clarke, who was behind the wheel when it happened. And of course Scotland law applies here. His defending counsel, Paul Reid, says he couldn't be expected to see what would have happened. And the prosecuting authorities in Scotland say that they are not going to prosecute because there is a lack of likelihood that the prosecution will be successful, or a lack of evidence enough to make a successful prosecution. Of course, the police haven't conducted an investigation of any real sort yet, so perhaps that's not to be surprising. The thing is, Scotland, unlike England, has a reckless endangerment law. Now, I don't know what reckless endangerment exactly is in precedent, but I know what it sounds like it is. It sounds like if you're waving a gun around and it's loaded, and it goes off but you didn't mean it to, and there are a lot of people there, it sounds like you're maybe liable for putting them in reckless endangerment by your actions, predictably so. Now, Harry Clarke went to see doctors about his condition, and I don't know if his employers were advised of it. They should have been, of course. That's another question for Harry Clarke. And I don't want to be too down on the guy, because all of us, if we have problems with our health, we don't want our driving licences to be affected. But there are exacerbating factors here, and they're very simple to point out. I'm not a professional driver. Harry Clarke is a professional driver. If you're going to be a professional driver, you have to be beyond reproach about how you tackle your health problems in relation to driving. He's driving a big vehicle. He's not riding a motorcycle or a bicycle. He's not on a sledge. He's driving a bin lorry through busy urban streets. The man has access to Google, and apparently almost all patients, many patients, before they go to doctors, have already looked up their conditions on Google. So even though Paul Reid, his defending counsel, says, I mean, he doesn't officially have to defend yet, of course, even though his legal person speaks for him and says he was entitled to rely on doctors and they didn't tell him he couldn't drive, I'm just wondering exactly what doctors did tell him. Be careful around machinery. Did they know he drove for a living? So, reckless endangerment, behind the wheel of a large lorry, and you know you have a health problem, that's a heck of a question for your conscience. One point I would make, ISP, internet service providers. If the police look through what his browsing history is on his internet service provider, and they find that he was Googling his condition, and that stuff that comes up is things like blacking out, extreme low blood pressure, stuff like that, the man's in the frame, I'm afraid, because then ignorance is not a protection. Plausible deniability no longer exists. He will have known what the possibilities were. I feel for Harry Clarke, because a lot of us are drivers and we feel for somebody who's got a health problem and has to drive for a living. But I feel a lot more for the people who are run over. That's my opinion. Check the ISP browsing. Thank you for watching and listening.